Hello everyone. Welcome to our first DBA AI in Business Rendezvous. My name is Evgeny. I'm in Paris, where it's extremely hot for this time of year. We are 20 degrees. It feels like definitely summer. And still we are having this first great webinar to discuss the impact of AI on business. So this is really the very first episode that we are launching. I'm very happy to host this episode with Dr. Chris Worley, who joins me to discuss this mysterious topic, the Manager's Vanishing Act. So we'll tell you more in a second. But to let everyone join, so I will start with a short presentation of the school, and this video podcast is supported by REN School of Business. So my name is Evgeny. I'm Director for Executive Education at REN, basically powering our executive development programs. The school is, if you don't know about the REN School of Business, here are some information. It's one of the best schools in the world. We're top 10 in France. We're the most international school in France, with more than 5 students coming from more than 80 countries, and with an alumni community of 20,000 all over the world, literally all over the world. And our campuses in Paris, Rennes, it's the west of France, and Shanghai. Our mission at REN School of Business, and also in executive education, is to create truly unframed learning experiences for individuals and organizational transformation. So this mission is embedded in the experiences that we create, in the education that we provide, and in communities that we build. And of course, one of our flagship programs is definitely one of the unframed ones. The DBA in AI and data science is one of the unique, it's actually unique, a DBA in AI program, professional doctorate, that REN been delivering for 5 years now. We have a big community of participants and alumni today, and this is what motivated us to launch this video podcast. We have a wealth of research produced by our participants, who then are business executives, leaders in different kind of organizations. I will tell you more about that in a second. So DBA in AI, what is this? This is a part-time doctorate program, which takes around 3 years to complete. It's 100% in English, designed for senior executives, entrepreneurs, and data leaders. It is 90% online. I say 90 because 10% are face-to-face during the global residencies. We have 2 global residencies, one in France, in Paris, in Rennes, and one Dubai, but it can also be in China. So we're always looking for the best places to go where we can see AI in action. The program is extremely international. We have 10 nationalities represented among DBA participants. 50% of them are engineers with technical background, and 50% are non-technical background, HR, sales, marketing professionals. This DBA accelerates the career of our participants and brings them to light, the recognition, but it also allows them to publish, of course, research, publish books, participates to the conference, and all of that empowered by our RENSB research ecosystem. Among the topics, maybe you are wondering, what are the topics that those executives are starting with this DBA? So here you can see some of examples. And some of these examples will be, we will engage in the conversation with the candidates and alumni in the next rendezvous series. So among the topics that they're starting is effectiveness of business model for AI ethics based auditing, study new product development strategy in automotive industry, research and influence and digital transformation, AI for zero waste, transforming food supply chain for sustainability, educator well-being in the era of AI, or else AI strategic framework for language model integration in customer support. So you see there's a big range of topics that our participants are studying, and we will try to leverage the knowledge, the findings that they get to in this DBA AI Rendezvous series. And here you also see some of the companies that our participants are coming from. So this said, I suggest that we jump into our first rendezvous, first video podcast with Professor Christopher Worley. We are going to discuss the Manager's Vanishing Act, what Chris called in his recent article, the Manager's Vanishing Act, how AI's efficiency imperative consumes its champions. So I have a chance to work with Chris for the past 2 years mainly on the subjects of organization design and organization design in the era of AI. But Chris has been doing a lot of research work, consulting for the past. Chris, I will tell you. You will tell us how many years. Many years. So today, Chris is clinical professor in strategy and organization design at REN, but also research professor emeritus of management at Pepperdine Business School, affiliated senior research scientist at USC Center for Effective Organizations, and also author of many books and articles, including Agility Factor, Built to Change, and more. Chris, you are now on stage together with me. Hello, thank you for joining.
Thanks, Evgeny. My pleasure, absolutely. And I'm speaking to everybody from Northern California in the United States, where it's quite cold, and we just got about 7 or 8 feet of snow several days ago. So I'm in a completely different environment than Paris, that's for sure.
Thank you for waking up a bit early. I know you start early in the US, but still, it's early morning for you.
Yes.
Before we kick off the discussion and the presentation, I speak to all our listeners, participants on LinkedIn Live. Please do interact. Share your questions, share your experience, share your readings, so what you listen to. This topic we're definitely learning about. So here with Chris, we are as much learners as speakers on the AI is a really topic in the making. So Chris, the floor is yours. I think you can move the slides, but if not, you just can let me know and I will do.
Well, let me see what happens when I try to do that.
Right on the screen.
Let's see.
If not, I do this for you, don't worry.
You may have to. I don't see the clicker on my side, Evgeny. We'll have to do the old-fashioned way. Thank you. What I thought I would do to kick off the conversation, and I agree with Evgeny, if you've got comments or questions as we kind of go along, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll try and listen and respond as best as I can. What I thought I'd do to start is just give you a little bit of perspective on how I approach this particular problem. I think it's fair to say I'm not a technologist or an engineer or a computer scientist. I'm an organization science person. I study strategy and design. But I like to think I understand the functions these people do. I think I'd be a good engineer if I went back to school. I think I'd be a good engineer, but I'm not. I'm not a computer scientist. I do watch what's going on with AI. I read a lot. I listen to a lot of the people who are talking about it. I try to stay on top. I think they call me a multi-homer. I use multiple AI products. I don't work with ChatGPT exclusively. I'm on Anthropic and Copilot and Gemini and all of them. So I use them all just to try and get a sense of what's going on. And I think if you're watching the conversation about AI, just depending on who you listen to, you could think, the world is going to be this utopian, wonderful place in the future. And you could also take away that we're all damned and going to hell because the AI is going to take over. So you can make up lots of different things. Nobody, I think, just disagrees with the notion that these systems they learn fast, and we need to pay attention to how fast they do learn, because making predictions has become a fool's errand. Whatever we talk about today is going to be obsolete tomorrow. And that's kind of one of my perspectives, is trying to say, how do I step back and understand what's going to happen with something that's going to change so fast. And I'm struck by the quote. It tends to get shortened, all evil requires is for good people to do nothing. But the original quote is from John Stuart Mill, and it basically says, people could use this technology for not good, for evil. And those of us who don't want it to use it for evil need to stand up and say something. So this is part of my way of standing up and saying something and trying to understand what's going on. As an example of kind of how fast things are going, when you get done with this webinar, I put a link in. I just listened to this podcast yesterday. Ezra Klein works with the New York Times, and he interviewed the co-founder of Anthropic. And even if you just listen to the first 30 minutes of it or so, after listening to this podcast, check and see if you don't think some of my ideas are right. Because Anthropic, like ChatGPT, those are the organizations that are making the technology. They're using the technology, and their organizations are designed around the technology. So they would be a really interesting case study of a picture of what other organizations are going to look like. And if after this conversation that we have, go listen to that and see if you agree that some of the things I'm going to talk about today aren't actually happening in organizations, and this would be something on the cutting edge of what we're doing. So that's kind of my perspective with respect to the technology, right? I'm not a technologist, but I do look at it. I do try to understand it as best as I can. And then I apply my particular lens, which is as an organization designer, as a strategist. And I do watch and study how organizations change. So one of the things I think we know is that when a technology is adopted in an organization, it doesn't matter whether it's AI, it could be digitalization or computer technologies or any number of different things, new products that represent new technologies. When they get adopted, they don't, it's not cut and paste, right? When people started doing continuous improvement and total quality management, if you went to one company and you said, oh, I understand total quality management, and you went to another company and looked at it, it wouldn't look the same. Those technologies get adopted and customized to the particular organization that they're in. And this begins sort of my understanding, or the question that I'm asking about AI. So let's go to the next slide, Evgeny. And so this is the question I'm asking, right? What will organizations do when they adopt it? And I've been doing research with the Rennes School of Business in particular, and then doing some of my own over here in the States. And I've come to this cautionary conclusion. And it was sort of, this is what I wrote about in the LinkedIn post several weeks ago, right? If you really understand organizations, right, then you will understand that as they adopt AI, the organizations, the executives, their cultures, their identities will begin to shape that technology in the image of the organization. And if I got a little more granular, I'd say if the organization is unaware of its culture and identity and the notions of the objectives of the executives and the boards and things, and this board of supervisors and things like that, if they're unaware of their orientation toward efficiency, AI will naturally lead them to a conclusion where they make themselves obsolete, right? So if we'll get into AI in a second and try and lay some groundwork or some foundation so we all have a common language. And I think this is one of the potentially one of the potential outcomes that I don't want, right? I would like to see AI and humans sort of interact and help each other. But I think there's a cautionary tale here that we need to pay attention to. And as a result of that, my recommendation, I'll talk about a couple of action steps that I think organizations should take at the end. I think we need to be sure we're waking up. We need to have our eyes wide open. And I'm not making judgments about people here. I'm just trying to observe the system and see what it's going to do. Okay? We need to wake up and recognize that this technology is going to move very fast. And if we're being kind of lazy about it, I'm not so sure we're going to get the result we want. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was to recognize how much pressure organizations are under to use AI as an efficiency tool, right? On the one hand, you've got the markets, you've got the Wall Street and the CAC 40, you've got different markets around the world, and the analysts are putting enormous pressure on organizations to maximize shareholder wealth, maximize stock price. And that's what they do. They don't have to. Maximizing stock price, in articles of corporation, it doesn't exist. There's nothing in the articles of corporation that says you have to maximize. But that's the myth. And many people see efficiency as the way to get profits up and therefore expectations of the market that you're doing the right thing. There's enormous pressure on organizations from the market to do that. There is enormous pressure inside the organization, given its culture and history and the way that it has come about. And I just put a little definition of culture in there from Ed Schein. I actually should have put his name on there. That's not a very good professorial thing of me. But you look at what it is. It's a pattern of shared behavior, a pattern of shared assumptions, beliefs that we have about the way we go about doing our work. And it works well enough that we teach it to others who come into the organization about the right way to think and feel and behave. Right? It's a powerful force. If you've seen any of the old psychology experiments about group pressure, you know how powerful a culture can be in encouraging people to act in certain ways. And then there's this other one that kind of sort of sits out there in terms of are corporations or the executives and the board members running them, are they greedy? And greed is not the same as self-interest. We're all self-interested. We're all trying to make ourselves better off. And in doing so, we believe that in making ourselves better off, everybody gets to be better off. That's classic economics. But when that self-interest becomes extreme, we potentially have a problem of greed where people will do things for themselves only instead of for the good of society. And that becomes a problem. And what I think it's important to find out is the way executives in corporations are being rewarded. And I'll get to that specific thing in a second. All right. So that's the big picture. I'm asking this question, what's going to happen? Because I think I understand organizations. Let's put this particular technology into some context, and let's do a little, forecasting and scenario building. So if you go to the next slide, for those of you who are, deep in AI, this will be a refresher. You can maybe check your phones and see how your texts are coming or your feed is doing. But I do think it's important to level set, right? AI's been around a long time. We've had artificial intelligence in the sense of the definition there at the bottom. We've had it for a long time. The current turn, though, is we're moving from the generative to the agentic. And this table kind of gives you a sense of some of the differences that are beginning to happen. Whereas generative AI responded, right, and said, I need to help me create some things, and it would help you create some content. To where now you're giving it a task and telling it to go off and do something, right? So it can be more autonomous. It can, given the objective that it's given, it can go off and do its own thing, right? So it's very different. It's a very different relationship. The interaction is different, right? It sits around and waits for you to ask it something versus you tell it to go off and do something. And I don't know if you've seen the Moltbot website where the agentic AIs are talking to each other. It's actually fun just to go scroll around and see what they're talking about, right? But this is the turn that we're making right now. Okay, so next slide. In the system we have to design, right? We have to start thinking about how our human agents, people who have objectives, career goals, families, career aspirations, trying to do their job as best they can. And we have AI agents who have been given tasks to do for us, hopefully better, faster, cheaper, whatever. And they have to interact in some interface, right, through a machine. And we have to understand how those two agents with their own objectives are going to interact through this machine system. We have to understand how that all works. And if you go to the next slide, Evgeny, what is happening today is you keep hearing people talk about deconstructing work. We're going to deconstruct the work. We're going to look at the specific tasks in a particular process. And we're going to say, where can AI be used to augment that task or replace the person who is performing the task? And with agentic AI, it's become much more easy to do that. Okay. This chart is not that question, right? The conversation is about, I'm going to deconstruct work and where do I put AI into it? Remember my perspective. My perspective is as a designer. And I'm trying to design the system, not just thinking about where AI can be installed and used in a process, but about the orientation and the intent of how the AI and human agents are going to work together and collaborate. So this is a design problem, not a technology implementation problem. And I found this article. I thought it was very, very clever, and I've played with the figure a little bit to try and make it a little more user friendly, even though it's an eyeful. But what they did was they characterized that who has agency? Who's in charge? Is the human in charge or is the AI agent in charge? Who decides how to proceed and under what conditions? Right? That's a design issue about where the decision-making power is going to be. I have to design that interaction. What is my motive? What is my motive in working with the system? Am I just trying to, look up information? Am I going to ask it to provide some information? Are we going to explore possibilities? Or am I going to actually ask it to evaluate what we're doing? What's the purpose of the guidance that the system is giving me? What's the focus of that guidance? Is it the big, broad system that we're operating in, or is it down to specific tasks, right? What's the scale, right, at which I'm using this AI human agentic system? What's the scale? Is it the big, large system, or is it the smaller system? And what kind of feedback am I looking for or getting? Am I asking for specific, explicit things to do? Or should we be thinking about getting the information informally through clicks and looking at what people do and looking at the back office, back part of the system in terms of what people are doing and how they're doing it? Where does that feedback come from? Then the third kind of dimension of the design is who's learning. Am I learning? Is the AI agent learning, or are we both learning? Right? And how are we collaborating to change? And is the intent or the objective of that collaboration to improve the task performance and get better at a particular process? Or is it we have to learn together how we are going to accomplish both of our goals? So again, I'm going to repeat what I said. Most of the work today is being done by deconstructing work and asking where AI can be used. I'm asking a different question. The question I'm asking is, in a culture and a system and market forces that are pushing the organization to be more efficient, if I go in and start designing these systems, will I start to make choices that say the agent is in charge? I'm going to say that by predetermined rules, the agent's in charge. It's evaluating things. It's recommending things. It's trying to make specific tasks and the system more efficient. It's working explicitly. And I don't care if the human is learning. Okay. So one of my concerns is that there's a lot of pressure to design the system in ways that push people out. And if you listen to this podcast that I talked about earlier, if you listen to that podcast, what you'll find out is that the agentic systems that we say, please go do this task for me. And you say, okay, that task got done pretty well. I have another task. That task has to get automated and given to an AI agent. And now those two tasks have to be coordinated. So I need a third agent, AI agent, that says, make sure these two systems, AI agents, are now coordinating. And let's say we're in an engineering department. That's great. But the engineering department now has to coordinate with supply chain, which has its own agents and coordinating agents. And so now you have to have another agent that coordinates the two coordinating agents. And we've just established hierarchy. Coordination mechanisms. And the goal of the system now is being run by an agent. Under a system where efficiency is important and labor costs are high. So I'm asking the question, what do you think is going to happen? That's the dark side, right? I think it's quite possible that the system, through no fault of its own, nobody intended it to get rid of people, but the system itself might just do that. And I argue in the little LinkedIn piece that managers and executives who aren't aware of this will eventually be left with the decision that even they are not necessary. Interesting. So what do I do about that? So I go to the next slide, Evgeny. What I think one of the answers is to be aware. Let's wake up. Let's understand the system that we're working with. Let's understand organizations. And most organizations that I talk to, if you ask them, do you have an AI policy? The answer is yes. Okay, what kind of policy is it? In most cases, organizations have a responsible AI policy on the far right column. And the policy begins to talk about safety, reliability, transparency, repeatability, right? I'm trying to make sure that the system, does what we say it's going to do. And remember, it's learning fast. We used, 3 weeks ago, we were talking about hallucinations. We're not talking about hallucinations anymore because that's being fixed. Okay. What I notice on that side is where are the people? And there's a group, especially coming out of Stanford, but there's other ones that are trying to ask questions about what would a human-centered AI policy look like? And it looks very different. And that's that center column in this graph. It looks very different. The orientation is about how do we work together to empower people? How do we help humans flourish? Right? It's about participation in the design. It's not just an engineer or a computer science saying, here's the thing we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's the scientists and the legal people and the user experience and the customer experience and the HR folks working together to determine how that process is going to go. Right? So it's a very different kind of system. And if I begin to ask, what do I do now? So we go to the last slide, Evgeny, and we'll wrap up here and see if people have questions. If organizations are asking me today, this is the kind of thing that I tell them. I think the first thing you got to do is check to see if your AI policy is a responsible policy or a human-centered AI policy. And begin to establish, argue, and if you need to, fight for a clear policy that says we are going to approach AI in a way that augments, supports, and empowers our people, our communities, our customers. Okay? And I think there's some great organizations out there that are doing just that. And I think they need to be, I'll go back to our friends at Anthropic. They've made some really interesting choices about how they deploy their systems. They're having a big argument with the Pentagon here in the United States now. Unlike other AI organizations, they do not use advertising inside the Claude I've forgotten the name of the AI agent, the Claude agent. They're making specific decisions about how they use the technology in a human-centered way. It's kind of interesting, right? I think Microsoft's doing a great job. I think Accor is doing a great job. I think there's some really interesting examples out there. A policy by itself is not enough. There's all kinds of policies, all kinds of corporate values. There's all kinds of things that end up on the walls of organizations that don't mean much. And so the second thing you've got to do is take that policy and turn it into a policy with some teeth. It's going to have some accountability built into it. And that means sort of doing a little bit of legwork. You're going to have to find out and look at your culture and identity. And to what extent do those shared assumptions imply that behaviors by executives and workers should be focused on efficiency rather than effectiveness? Effectiveness is a much broader concept. We want to understand how the system works and benefits a whole set of stakeholders. Okay? I think it's important to look at the contracts of executives. Again, I'm not making judgments here. I'm just saying in a system where these market forces are pushing people for efficiency, I can have a human-centered AI policy, but if my performance contract says I'm paid for cutting costs and lowering and raising profits and things like that, I might actually work in ways that disagree with or contradict the AI policy. I think you have to look at that. I also think, because I'm an organization person, designer, you have to look at the way the organization really is designed and the way the structures and the systems, the processes, the rewards and incentives, the human resource practices, to what extent are those aiming for a more bureaucratic, and I don't use that in the negative sense of the term, it's just a form of organization, a bureaucratic organization, right, with top-down controls and clear roles and responsibilities, or are you set up as an agile organization, one that sees change as normal, right? Because I think if you put AI into a bureaucracy, you're going to have an explosion. AI is changing and learning all the time. Bureaucracies don't learn as fast as agile organizations do. And so I think it's important to look at the way your organization is set up. And I think those three things, looking at your culture, looking at the executive contracts, and looking at the design of the organization, I think those are three areas, very powerful areas, where you can begin to say, I'm going to put a human-centered AI policy in place, and I'm going to back it up with systems and processes and structures that actually support that policy and begin to look at the way things are operating inside the organization. I'll give you one quick example. An organization I was talking to, they had lots of AI projects going on. When they went through this process and said, we need to have a human-centered AI, and then they looked at each of the AI projects, each of those projects was chartered to be more efficient, to bring efficiency into the system. And so they had to go back, and this was a big deal. They had to go back to each of those projects and recharter them to ensure that each of the projects was being done with a human-centered as opposed to a responsible AI objective, right? And so that caused a lot of consternation, but the organization learned. It learned that it had to be conscious and aware of the policies and the systems and structures that it had and the way it was pushing the organization's change processes toward a more human-centered way where humans could flourish. Okay, let me stop, Evgeny, and see if people have comments or questions or how you want to proceed with the thing. I'm going to turn my shade down here. The sun is up now here in sunny California.
Sun is up and here sun is down. Chris, you're giving three interesting directions to explore and to think about this human-centered AI policy. Who, from your experience, an organization should be owning this, or who should be acting on this? Where should this start? Who should start this work?
Yeah, I think the easy answer is it has to start at the board level, board of supervisors, board of directors. I think that's the easy answer. They're ultimately responsible for the direction of the organization and the executive, working with the executive team and the CODIR and all of that. That's their job. That's their responsibility. These pressures are real, right? These pressures that I talk about from the market, from the culture, from the incentive plan, those are real pressures. And so sometimes those people are actually in a really tight spot because they have to say, yes, I believe in a human-centered direction where AI is supporting, and yet the system is designed to help them act in a different way. So it's easy to talk about that. Where I get on the ground is whoever does this, and it's always got to be a group. It's got to be a group that is multifunctional. I need executives, I need HR folks, I need technologists, I need the legal folks, I need the cybersecurity folks, I need the IT architect. I've got to have a really, truly cross-functional group who have some power in the organization. Otherwise, if they don't have any power in the organization, again, it will be a group of people that talk about good things, but nothing can happen. So I think the harder answer to the question is getting the right people, getting some powerful people who believe in this and pulling them together so they can manage up to the executive and the boards and manage down inside the organization. So I look for this kind of meso level group of people.
Right. So we start having some questions. There is a delay between our conversation and the live on LinkedIn. I think there is around 3 to 4 minutes delay, actually. So
Okay.
one of the questions is to clarify a little bit human-centered AI policy. So does human-centered include responsible by definition? What's your
Yes. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So the responsible AI is focused more on the technology itself and how it's being used, right? And I want to know that if I ask a question of AI one time, if I ask the same question again, I'll get kind of the same answer. And the reliability of the system is and it's about security, right? At first everybody was adopting Chat GPT and started asking questions and putting all kinds of, proprietary information out into the cyberspace. And no, can't do that. We've got to have a system that is enclosed and put together. So yes, a human-centered one has to have responsible AI as kind of a core. But then it gets to this design thing. It gets to this design question about what's the intent of the way I'm going to use it in a reliable, safe, secure manner. Yeah.
I'm thinking about what you just said just before that, about who are people who owning or who should be initiating the process in organizations. And I keep thinking about the fact that those people might not be aware of all this organization design knowledge and science, which are those 3 directions that you have spoken about. So does it mean that the influence sits with some other parts of organization? Should this be HR people? Should this be people in change management? Sometimes I see it. So recently I have spoken to a change leader from an organization who is trying to kind of push the organization to think about this because he's been working on this stuff. But for businesses, still a lot performance and productivity conversation rather than systems conversation.
Yeah. I'm going to say some things that might not make people very happy. Okay. So I'm not sure HR and change management is the place it's going to start. In most organizations, I don't see those functions having the power they needed to sort of push this agenda. And so I do think it has to come from line management. I think it has to come from customers. I think it has to come from business leaders, maybe depending on how the organization is put together, from functions. I think it has to come from some very powerful places. And as a general rule, I certainly don't want to suggest this is true in all cases. As a general rule, I worry that HR and change management don't quite have the power they need to push this agenda. I got a thing here from Bob about a note about looking at the org design model. No, I still think the STAR model works, Bob. I use it all the time, right? I use it all the time because it helps me think about the system, and it helps me bring the system and makes the system visible, right? When I'm designing stuff. So in that sense, back to your question, Evgeny, in that sense, I think this is a place where HR and change management and the org development and org effectiveness folks can play a role, because they can bring the system and make it visible to people through models such as the Galbraith Star, McKinsey 7S, those kinds of things. It makes the system visible, and people can be much more aware of how the different forces are working inside the organization. Yeah.
So speaking about the management, line management, so we've got the question right into the topic. So what's your perspective on how managers remain strategically valuable in an AI-driven organization that you study?
Well, that's it, isn't it, Vlad? That's the direction we're trying to push all of this. right? We're trying to push in the direction and make managers aware, in my little telling of a tale, that if managers aren't aware, they will make decisions that make themselves obsolete. The thing I talked about in the LinkedIn post was managers are not aware that they're part of the magic trick, right? And so the becoming aware and expressing interest in making AI in the organization a human-centered process actually is in their best interest. It's actually in their best interest to do that, because eventually an agent will talk to an agent needs to be coordinated, other agents need to be coordinated. We build in hierarchy in the AI agents, and you begin to ask, why do I need a manager to coordinate? And so I've backed myself into a corner. And this is where I think the managers are in a better position to say, this is how I want to push this forward. That's a great question. That's exactly right. Yeah.
So we have some more questions flying in. As I said, there was a little delay. So I will just, before we go into the next question, I will show and let people to keep asking questions. Go ahead. We're here for that as well, for the discussion. Show some what's going to be next as well, because we have opened with Chris this great series of rendezvous of DBA of AI discussions, the I in business discussions. And so we have already very nice panel lined up for you in the next months. So each rendezvous will be facilitated with one of our participants or alumni of DBA, senior executives and from different organizations, from different parts of the world as well, because what we think is interesting to learn from people in different parts of the world on their take on AI in sectors where they're working. So the next one will be on the 27th of March, this time at 11 a.m. Paris, with Emad, who is studying effectiveness model in AI ethics-based auditing. So he will be sharing some results and reflections on what he sees in this area. And then we will continue in April. This time we will go to China with Xin Sun, who studies operating models, AI operating models. We have a big community of students in China, in large Chinese companies, so don't miss this one. Very interesting. So Chris, for you, it's going to be very late in the night. You can also see the replay. You can also put the blocker in your agenda on the 11th of May. 11th of May, we're going to have great discussion. We're back to the US with Damien Perfey on AI bias mitigation in recruitment. Big question, a big debate. And the last one before summer break with Naveen, who is Chief Data AI Officer at Wells Fargo, based in India. So he's our alumni, and he works on the responsible AI construct for executive race. So don't miss those one. Take note in your calendar. And I'm going back to you, Chris, with the next question.
Yeah, I was, as you were talking, I was scrolling through some of the comments and questions.
Tell me, maybe there are some that you want to pick. Let me know.
No, go ahead. But go ahead and put the one up there that you had. That's great. Yeah.
So you talked about organizations that are working on leveraging AI.
This is a good one. So I think when we were doing digitalization, if you remember that not so long ago, I think a lot of the approaches to digitalization were, I'm not really sure what it is. This is kind of the view of top management. I know people are talking about it. We should get involved in this. It sounds like it's something that would be helpful to us. And the truth is it is. So what happened was they let 1,000 flowers bloom. A lot of experimenting inside the organization and down, and letting people try it out and see what they could do with it and how they might have, and sort of see what pops up. Okay. If you apply this logic that I tried to explain, and the culture is driven by efficiency, what do you think all of the 1,000 flowers blooming are trying to accomplish? If the organization is set up as a bureaucracy, if its orientation is toward efficiency, what will the natural tendency of any of these thousand flowers blooming be? It'll be toward efficiency. And again, nothing wrong with efficiency. I hope you don't hear me saying efficiency is bad. It's a good thing. You always have to watch out for costs and remain proximate in your strategy. That's good strategy 101. But if all of these are aimed at improving efficiency, okay, now I start to worry as we start to look across all of these things, and we want to find a way to help these different AI augmented processes now come together. Under what kind of value system or orientation or perspective is that coordination and compilation happening? So yeah, I think it's great. I think people do need to be encouraged to understand what this system is and what it does. And as I learn about it, am I guided by a sense that, okay, how do I use this to help the organization and help my customers? Or am I guided by, this is going to replace me, right? That's a lot of the motivation of people now, right? Once they get these little different processes and they have access to the agents, they start to see what the agents can do. And their first thing is self-interest. This thing can replace me. What am I going to do? And I think that's we've now set up the person against the organization, and I don't see that as a winning combination. I want to get the people in the organization to work toward its AI's implementation in service of the organization and the people in the organization and our customers. Right. So that's a great question. I mean, that's really what's happening in a lot of organizations. People are trying it out. Great. How are we going to coordinate all that? Early hires.
What's your reflection on this?
So what kind of support they need in the long term? I read a statistic. In the United States, they have one of the recruiting sites is called Indeed. And somebody just did an analysis of all the job postings on Indeed over the last month. And some small percentage, like less than 20%, like don't quote me, I'm trying to get numbers right. 10% of the things required AI as a skill set. That's pretty small. So there's a lot of conversation and talk about what AI is, and I do think we could be overwhelmed by the sensationalist headlines coming out of the media. On the ground, people are trying to figure it out. So if the comment is about early hires and bringing people in, and do they have those skills? So far, if I'm reading this data right, it says it'd be nice, but it's not a requirement yet. I hope I understood the question and what you were trying to ask. But I thought that was interesting.
Wow. I also speak a little bit in the podcast, I guess, on the early hires that you've shared from Anthropic. It's a big question. They were saying actually that Anthropic, they have now less coders, so they have not kind of let them out, but they have transferred them into the other roles.
Yes. Yeah. They said something to the effect of 90 to 95% of their code now is written by their own agents.
Yes.
And so the people who wrote the code now have to go and have been shifted into roles where they monitor the code and make sure that it's responsible AI.
Exactly.
Right. But they're also trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I use my technology in ways that bring people in? And so they're hiring a lot more. Maybe it was middle managers right now, or maybe higher level. They wanted experience. That's what it was. They were looking for people who had experience in coordinating things.
exactly what
Interesting.
you experience. Yes, this is a big shifts which are happening, but maybe this goes back as well to what you were saying about rather than investing into preparing for these new roles, which can be still keep changing, new technology going to be changing. It's about preparing your organization for to be agile to any kind of transformational shift which will happen.
Yeah. I'm looking at Rachel. Hi, Rachel. How are you? I'm looking at her comment about, could we find ways to bring stuff up, right, from one-on-one? And I do think there are change processes that could be used that way, right? In other words, if the voice of the employees is fragmented and diffuse, it's difficult to start a movement. But if the voices can collectively be pulled together to say, we would like the corporation to be really cognizant of what it's doing and how it's adopting this technology, I do think there is a chance for some, again, you can get into these social movement notions of change and come up from the bottom a little more. And that might link back to the comment about the 1,000 flowers blooming. What if the 1,000 flowers blooming are actually in coordination under a human-centered AI policy? Now I think the possibility for change in a good direction. Obviously, all of this is very values-based. I'm being very biased in what my values are about this. But that's certainly a possibility. It'd be interesting to find an organization with a human-centered policy that says, let 1,000 flowers bloom under that policy, and see if you got a social movement within the organization to say, this is the direction we should go. Interesting.
Thank you, Chris. I think we're running out of time. Do you have any closing comment and closing remark, anything that you've spotted maybe in the discussions that you would like to emphasize before we
it's only that we know enough to ask the right questions, and with that knowledge and awareness to go into our systems and start somebody had poke the bear. You can go in there and poke the bear. We understand how organizations work. We understand the influence of cultures and the markets and things. Okay, let's wake up. Let's have our eyes open as we go in and try and change these things.
Thank you, Chris. It was great
having
this conversation with you. We could continue that, and we will continue that. And so for you, so that you know, we have the DBA next intake coming in April. So if you hesitating on doing research and start learning as an executive, I think these times are extremely good for that. So starting in 17th of April. And we also do with Chris an organization agility and AI program in Rennes. So Chris will be back to France.
I'm coming to France. Yeah.
Yes.
My second home.
Exactly. You have two homes here, Rennes and Paris. We're happy to have you in both places. Thank you so much. So, guys, see you next time in the next DBA AI Rendezvous in March. And Chris, thank you so much, and see you in April.
Thank you. Great to see all the people on the chat. Be well. Take care.
Be well. Bye-bye.